Imagine your career is in ruins. Your reputation is shattered. You've suffered one of the most humiliating military defeats in your nation's history. Now, your replacement is literally riding towards you to strip away your command. You've got one chance. One final battle to salvage everything. Do you obey orders to stand down? Or do you ignore your superiors, march your army forward, and gamble everything on one last throw of the dice? This is the story of Lord Chelmsford and the Battle of Ulundi, where desperation, defiance, and redemption collided on the plains of Zululand. Let's rewind a bit. By mid-1879, the British invasion of Zululand had gone spectacularly wrong. At Sandwanya, the Zulu army had annihilated a British force, killing over 1,300 soldiers in one of Britain's worst colonial defeats. The news hit Britain like a bombshell. The public was outraged. The military establishment was embarrassed, and Lord Chelmsford, the commander responsible, he was absolutely finished. Or so everyone thought. In response to the disaster, reinforcements flooded into Natal. Thousands of fresh troops, artillery batteries, cavalry regiments, everything needed for a second invasion. Chelmsford prepared to lead this new force. But there was a problem. Her Majesty's government had already sent someone to replace him. Sir Garnet Wolseley was en route to South Africa, with explicit orders to take command and relegate Chelmsford to a supporting role. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Chelmsford was told in no uncertain terms to submit his plans to Wolseley's control, to wait, to coordinate, to basically accept that his career was over and let someone else clean up his mess. Chelmsford ignored all of it. King Setchwe, the Zulu leader, had been sending peace envoys offering to negotiate. The Zulus had won at Isandlwana, but suffered defeats elsewhere. They'd lost men. They were recovering. Setchwe knew continued war would destroy his kingdom. He wanted terms. Chelmsford rejected every offer. Why? Because he knew that if peace was negotiated before Wolseley arrived, he'd never get his chance at redemption. He needed to strike whilst the Zulus were vulnerable and before Wolseley could physically stop him. It was all about salvaging his reputation. Consequences be damned. Early June, Chelmsford had assembled a proper army. 2 cavalry regiments, 5 artillery batteries, 12 infantry battalions. In total, about 1,000 cavalry, 9,000 regular infantry, plus another 7,000 support troops. 24 guns, including something brand new, the British Army's first Gatling gun battery. The Industrial Revolution had come to African warfare. On 3 de Junio, the main invasion thrust began its slow advance towards Ulundi, the Zulu capital. And here's what's fascinating. Setchwe still hoped for peace. He deliberately refrained from attacking the extended British supply lines, which were absolutely vulnerable. One good Zulu strike could crippled the entire invasion. But Setchwe held back, still hoping diplomacy might work. The British advance was completely unopposed. As Chelmsford's force moved deeper into Zululand, Setchwe dispatched envoys from Ulundi. They reached Chelmsford on the 4th of June with a simple message. What terms would be acceptable to end this war? Chelmsford sent back written demands. Harsh demands. He knew Setchwe couldn't meet them all, but he gave him cover to keep advancing whilst looking reasonable. By the 16th of June, Chelmsford quickened the pace. Why? Because he'd received news that Wolseley was on his way to Natal to assume command. The clock was ticking. On the 28th of June, Chelmsford's column was just 17 miles from Ulundi. They'd established a supply depot. Everything was ready for the final push. That same day, Wolseley arrived in Cape Town and immediately sent a message ordering Chelmsford not to undertake any serious actions against the Zulus. Chelmsford didn't reply, didn't acknowledge the order. Just ignored it completely. Wolseley sent a second message on the 30th of June, and you can feel his frustration. Concentrate your force immediately and keep it concentrated. Undertake no serious operations with detached bodies of troops. Acknowledge your receipt of this message at once and report your latest movements. I am astonished at not hearing from you. Can you imagine? A superior officer, hundreds of miles away, trying desperately to assert command whilst his subordinate just pretends the messages don't exist. Wolseley's started riding north from Durban, straining to reach the front before Chelmsford could engage, but he was too far away. Too late. Too late. Meanwhile, on the same day as Wolseley's frustrated message, Cetewayo's representatives appeared again at the British camp. They brought some of what Chelmsford had demanded oxen, a promise of guns, and a gift of elephant tusks as a peace offering. Chelmsford rejected it all. The terms hadn't been fully met, he claimed. He turned the envoys away without even accepting the elephant tusks and informed them the advance would be delayed only one day to allow the Zulus to surrender. One entire regiment of their army. Now Chelmsford knew full well no Zulu regiment would surrender. It was an impossible demand, but it gave him justification to attack. Cetewayo, desperate now, sent another 100 white oxen from his own personal herd. He even included Prince Napoleon's sword, the French prince, who'd been killed in a skirmish whilst attached to the British forces. It was a gesture of good faith, returning something of value and significance. But the UMC-4 regiment, guarding the approaches to the White Umfalose River where the British were camped, refused to let the oxen pass. They deemed it a useless gesture. Meeting all of Chelmsford's demands was impossible. Fighting was inevitable. On 13 de Julio, with negotiations having broken down completely, Colonel Buller led a cavalry force across the river to scout the ground beyond. A party of Zulus was spotted herding goats near a stream. Troopers moved to round them up. Standard procedure. But Buller had a hunch. He ordered his men to stop, prepare to fire from the saddle, and under no circumstances to dismount. His instinct saved their lives. 3,000 Zulus suddenly rose from the long grass. It was an ambush. 3 troopers were shot dead immediately. Buller ordered his men to retire military speak for get the hell out of there now. As they dashed back to the river, their crossing was covered by the Transvaal Rangers on the opposite bank. Buller's alertness and leadership had saved them from annihilation. Chelmsford was now convinced the Zulus wanted to fight. He sent a reply to Wolseley's 3rd message, informing him that yes, he would retreat to 1st Division if necessary, but also almost casually mentioning he'd be attacking the Zulus the next day. That evening, Chelmsford issued his battle orders. The British had learned a harsh lesson and they wouldn't take chances meeting the Zulu army in open battle using normal formations. No thin red line here. Instead, Chelmsford formed his infantry into a large hollow square. Mounted troops would cover the sides and rear. No wagon loggers, no trenches. He wanted to prove that a British square could beat the Zulus fairly in the open. Pride and tactical necessity combined. Inside the square, headquarters staff, engineers, native contingents, and a rear guard of lancers. 2 Gatling guns and several cannons were positioned for maximum effect. By 8 a.m. on the 4th of July, no Zulus in significant numbers had been spotted. Chelmsford sent mounted troops forward to provoke the enemy. They opened fire near the stream, attempting to trigger a premature charge before retreating back to the main force. Then the Zulu army appeared, under the command of Omnyamana. Around 15,000 warriors stood in a horseshoe shape, encircling the north, east, and southern sides of the British square. Veterans and novices mixed together. Some confident, some nervous, all committed. The British were ready, and what followed was less a battle and more an industrial-scale slaughter. Zulu regiments charged forward directly into massed rifle fire. Non-stop fire from the Gatling guns, artillery firing at point-blank range. The noise must have been absolutely deafening. The killing, utterly mechanical. The Zulus were incredibly brave. They charged multiple times, trying desperately to close the distance for hand-to-hand combat, where their numerical advantage and close-quarters skills would matter. But they couldn't prevail against the concentrated firepower. There were casualties within the square, from Zulu marksman 8, 7 wounded. 10 killed, but the British firing never wavered. Not a single Zulu warrior got within 30 yards of the British ranks. The Zulu reserve force rose and charged the southwest corner of the square. 9-pounder cannons tore great chunks out of their formation. Infantry opened fire. The speed of the charge made it seem like they might break through, might finally engage hand-to-hand. But no warrior reached the British ranks. After half an hour of concentrated fire from artillery, Gatling guns, and thousands of riflemen, the Zulu military power was broken. Nearly 500 Zulu dead were counted around the square. Another 1,000 or more wounded. The flower of Zulu military might had been shattered by industrial warfare. Chelmsford ordered the cavalry to mount. The 17th Lancers, Dragoon Guards, Colonial Cavalry, and native horse charged the now fleeing Zulu. The pursuit continued across the Malabathini Plain. Soldiers killed wounded Zulus in revenge for similar actions at Isa. It was brutal, ugly. Toto Chelmsford ordered the royal kraal of Ulundi burnt. The capital of Zululand burned 4 days, the smoke visible for miles. The message, unmistakable Zulu resistance, was finished. On the 15th of July, Chelmsford turned over command to Wolseley at Fort St. Paul. He left for home on the 17th, having partially salvaged his reputation. He received a Knight Grand Cross of the Order of the Bath, largely because of Ulundi, but he was severely criticized by official investigations and never served in the field again. King Sechueo was captured on the 28th of August 1879 and taken into exile in the Cape Colony. The British established a puppet regime in Zululand, then withdrew, having destroyed an independent kingdom to salvage one general's reputation. Here's what makes this story so complex. Chelmsford won his battle and restored some honor. But at what cost? He ignored lawful orders from superiors. He rejected genuine peace offers. He marched an army into combat, primarily to salvage his personal reputation. Thousands died British soldiers. Sulu warriors in a battle that didn't need to happen. The Battle of Ulundi demonstrated that industrial era firepower made traditional warrior tactics obsolete. Gatling guns and breech-loading rifles created killing zones that courage alone couldn't overcome. It marked the end of Zulu independence and the beginning of colonial subjugation, but it also showed that personal ambition could drive military decisions as much as strategy or politics. Chelmsford's desperation for redemption shaped British colonial policy and determined the fate of an entire nation. So was Ulundi, a triumphant redemption or a cautionary tale about pride and ambition. Bit of both. Probably history's messy like that. If you're fascinated by these complex historical moments where personal ambition, military strategy, and empire collided with devastating consequences, hit that like button. Subscribe for more stories that prove history is never as simple as good versus evil. Drop a comment. What other morally complicated historical battles should I cover? I'll catch you in the next one. And remember, sometimes victory comes at a price that's hard to justify.